Okay, so now we're looking at the washer method, rotating it around lines that are parallel to the x-axis. So we're going to be working with rotating around lines like y equals 4, y equals -1, y equals 2, any straight horizontal line. Like the x-axis, except instead of y equals 0, it's going to be y equals some number. Like here we have the area between y equals x squared plus 2 and y equals 4 minus x squared. And instead of rotating it around the x-axis, we're rotating it around y equals -3, which we see here. So this is the area, and we're going to be rotating it all the way around this line, y equals -3, to create a solid, and we're going to find its volume. And again, we're going to need to find A and B, the points of intersection. So I went ahead and did that there. Again, just set them equal, end up with x equals -1 and x equals 1. -1 is going to be A, and 1 is going to be B. So now we're ready to set up our integral. V equals pi times the integral of -1 to 1. And with these types of questions, there's one huge important difference, and you'll see as I'm setting it up. So we'll just start out slow. So it's going to be f of x, and then because we're rotating around y equals -3, instead of just f of x, it's going to be f of x minus -3 squared, because you have to find the radius from f of x to -3 instead of when it was just the x-axis, which would have been f of x minus 0. So you could just ignore it. So now it's going to be minus g of x minus -3 all squared with respect to x. And that's what it should look like. And for questions like these, a lot of simplifying is needed before you can integrate. So what we did, this is what we started with. So just replace f of x and g of x. So we had 4 minus x squared plus 3, also known as, because it's minus -3, you can just write plus 3, and x squared plus 2 plus 3 squared. So combine those constants and you get 7 minus x squared and the quantity of x squared plus 5 squared. And then you have to combine these two terms after first you have to multiply them out, and you get 49 minus 14x squared plus x to the fourth minus the quantity of x to the fourth plus 10x squared plus 25, and you could finally write it all in one term as, notice the x to the fourths negate each other, and you get -24x squared plus 24 integrated from -1 to 1 with respect to x, which we will do now. So after you integrate, you get pi times -8x cubed plus 24x, which you will evaluate from -1 to 1, which will give you 32 pi, which again is the volume of the solid generated when you rotate this area around y equals -3. So for our second example, we're going to use the area between y equals x squared, y equals 12 minus x, and x equals 0, and rotate it around y equals 15. So a graph shows this as our area here, and we're going to rotate it above around y equals 15. So the first thing we need to do again is find a and b. So we set these two, the first two, equal to each other, and solve. So it'll be x squared plus x minus 12 equals 0. And factoring gives you x plus 4 times x minus 3 equals 0. And your roots will be x equals -4 and x equals 3. And you can throw out x equals -4, because as we see here, where we have x equals 0 as a boundary. So a is actually going to be 0, and then b will be 3. Let's here a equals 0, and we can set up the integral again. So it's going to be v equals pi times the integral from 0 to 3, and instead of the function minus the 15 as we did in the last question, it's going to be 15 minus the function because the 15 is on top. Another thing to notice is that our big R, or f of x here, is actually going to be the bottom function because this 15 to the bottom creates a bigger radius than 15 to the top function. So f of x here is going to be the bottom function, big R, and g of x is going to be little r, the top function. So it's going to be 15 minus f of x all squared minus 15 minus g of x all squared with respect to x. Once again, quite a bit of simplification has to go on before you can integrate. So the first thing you're going to do is replace f of x and g of x with their respective functions. So you'll get 15 minus x squared minus the quantity of 15 minus the quantity of 12 minus x squared. And in this term, you're going to have to combine those terms first before you square it. So you'll end up with squaring this. You'll get 225 minus 30x squared plus x to the fourth minus the quantity of 3 plus x squared. And you'll get 225 minus 30x squared plus x to the fourth minus the quantity of 9 plus 6x plus x squared. And then combining these two, you'll get 216 minus 31x squared plus x to the fourth minus 6x. And you'll be able to integrate it now with respect to x. You'll get v equals pi times 216x minus 31 over 3 x cubed plus 1/5 x to the fifth minus 3x squared, which you'll evaluate from 0 to 3. And your final answer is the volume equals 1,337 over 5 times pi.